What's up, everybody? You're watching Model Aviator. I'm Adam, and this week marks the first time in 2024 that we bring you a new release announcement and review of a plane from Horizon Hobby. This is the new E-Flite Turbo Timber SWS 2.0 meter. SWS stands for Sport Wood Series, so yeah, this is a big balsa plane. And because it's a series, that means that we're going to see some more balsa planes coming from E-Flite in the future. We'll kick this one off the same way we always do, by showing you how it goes together. The Turbo Timber SWS comes two ways. You can buy it in ARF form, which is the covered airframe. You choose, purchase, and install all of your electronics other than the lights. It also comes as a bind and fly, which means all the electronics are chosen and installed for you. The manual is very well written, and the ARF and bind and fly instructions are mixed amongst each other on each page. So I highly recommend that you read the instructions front to back so that you know which parts are relevant to what you're doing and you can have a plan. If you really want to make it easier for yourself, take a highlighter and highlight the parts relevant to what you're doing. Now when it comes to this airplane in ARF form, a lot is pre-done and made very easy for you. Everything is bolt-on, there's no glue required. All of the control surfaces are pre-hinged for you. The holes for the cowling are pre-drilled, which means it is pre-fit for you. And if you use the proprietary avian motor, your spinner to cowling nice, tight, clean gap will already be preset as well. So note that this is the bind and fly, so the assembly you're about to see is relative to those steps. As you can see, for a balsa plane, the part count is about the same as a foamy. They'll start you with the tail section. The first thing you'll do is remove a plug at the rear of the fuse with a single screw. Then you'll slide in your horizontal. There's a rectangular hole in the horizontal that lines up with a rectangular hole in the fuselage. That's how you know you have it lined up correctly. Then you replace the plug at the back, and you can bring your vertical down into place. Obviously, the rectangular shape of the vertical goes into the rectangular hole we pointed out, and then that leaves you with two studs protruding out of the bottom of the fuse in two holes. Next, you'll use a washer and a lock nut on each of the two studs to tighten down the tail section. You'll move now to the tail wheel bracket. There are three pre-drilled holes, and you'll use three self-tapping screws to attach that. You're moving on now to the main gear. You'll move the main gear cover, place your main gear in place, prepare your bolts with a lock washer, a washer, and some Loctite. There are three of them. Place your main gear cover in place and then bolt it down. Next, we'll attach the axles and wheels. The axles attach with a single lock nut. You'll then slide one wheel collar on and attach it to the base of the axle. Notice there's a flat spot on the end of the axle. We have that facing the rear. Next comes the tire, and then a second wheel collar that actually locks down on that flat spot. We face this to the rear so that when we land, the grub screw on the wheel collar is also facing the rear, and there's less chance that debris will hit it during a landing. The main landing gear covers are optional. They're not structural. The landing gear will work fine without them, but they make it look a lot better in our opinion, so we attach them. You'll use some sort of fast-drying contact cement. We used shoe goo, and then you'll simply use clamps to hold those in place while it dries. We recommend doing this at the very end of your build so that you're not mucking around with anything else on the airplane while that dries. Next, we installed our aluminum prop adapter to our motor. This requires 4 bolts. Remember to use Loctite and don't over-tighten those bolts. You can then go in the battery bay, put your Velcro down, and install your battery strap in the slot you want, and then move on to the cowling. There are light wires coming off the cowling that you will route underneath the motor box through a small hole back to a plug coming off the receiver. The cowling installs with 2 self-tapping screws on either side. Those holes are already placed and pre-drilled for you. Next, you'll install your wings, and this is a process you're going to be repeating over and over again at the field. There's a bit of wiring to contend with, and we came up with a quick modification to make field assembly a bit easier. You'll put the aluminum wing tube into one wing and simply slide the other wing down in place. There's an anti-rotation pin to help you get it lined up right. Be sure you don't pinch any wires in the process. One of the things that I ran into when we got to the field is the field assembly. You have a lot of wires to plug in, and it takes two hands to plug those wires in, so I was having to kind of throw a shoulder against the wing to be able to plug those in with two hands. So I made myself a light plug rail. I took 1/8 inch light ply, cut it to these dimensions. I cut a step to these dimensions and glued it on one end. Now you're looking at the bulkhead in front of the rear wing mount. I just glued the light rail in place and then simply hot glued my flap and aileron connections onto the rail and marked them. Now it's easy to get them plugged into the right plug each time, and I can hold the wing with one hand and simply plug my plugs in with the other. I've got the two connections for the lights simply glued to the bulkhead directly in front of that because they have to go down in front of that, and it just makes things simple. You don't have to do this, but it certainly made it easier for me. At this point in the assembly, we recommend that you go ahead and program your transmitter. The manual covers that very well and makes it easy for you. Go ahead and bind the airplane to your transmitter and power it up. That gets all the servos centered, and now you can install your push rods and center the control surfaces while you're at it. We also recommend that you go ahead and finish whatever preliminary setup you're going to put on the airplane before Maiden while you've got it powered up without the prop on. And when that's done, the final step is to put your prop and spinner on. Now, one quick point of note, you will notice that we may have gone out of order according to the manual. That's what I mean by look at the instructions front to back and make a plan. Sometimes changing the steps around can make things a little bit easier for you. For instance, in the manual, they want you to put the axles and wheels on the landing gear before you put the main gear on the airplane. Well, I've found if you install the main gear on the airplane first, the airplane holds the gear for you while you're mucking around with the wheels. Just makes more sense to me, but there's nothing wrong with doing it in the order in the manual, but that is why we change it up some. The Turbo Timber SWS has a wingspan of 80 inches. It's 56 inches long. Our example weighs 9 pounds 6 ounces ready to fly with a Spectrum Smart G2 6S 5000 milliamp pack. It's equipped with an Avian 100 amp Smart Brushless ESC, an Avian 50-55 500 kV brushless motor, and 6 Spectrum A6380 digital high voltage servos. It's intended for use with 3200 to 7000 milliamp 4 and 6S packs. The Bind and Fly comes equipped with a Spectrum AR8360T receiver. That's an 8-channel, smart, AS3X and optional Safe Select capable receiver. The way the airplane's configured out of the box, it's a 5 or 6 channel airplane. You have elevator, rudder, aileron, flap, and throttle. You can utilize that 6 channel to flip between AS3X and Safe Select should you choose to activate it. Now, the interesting thing about this receiver, and this is awesome, it is unlocked out of the box, which means if you have a forward programming capable transmitter, you can go right in there and start making changes to suit your tastes and preferences. The wing is interesting as well. The flaps are not double beveled, so they can't function as full span ailerons, but to be honest, the roller to this airplane is pretty sporty as it is. What you can do is plug your ailerons into separate channels on the receiver, reconfigure your wing type in your transmitter, reprogram the receiver through forward programming to accept the new wing type, and now you can use the 7th channel to go between standard wing, full span flaps, and crow. If you're using the compatible Spectrum transmitter, there's a good bit of smart telemetry available as well. You get flight log information, minimum and maximum voltages and altitude, ESC minimum and maximum status, on the fly ESC status, battery information, AS3X setting, a G meter, and a variometer that is a combination altitude indicator and barometer. One neat feature is that it is 4 and 6S capable. However, one caveat is at this size, clearly it is much more capable on 6L than 4cell. Horizon provides one prop just to make it easy and to keep things safe. Keep in mind, if you're a more advanced modeler and you have a watt meter handy, you can prop this thing up on 4cell. Go with a bigger prop, do some testing, get the amp draw up to where it is on 6cell. You'll end up with a bigger prop, making a lot more power on 4cell. Just remember to be safe. If you're going to go between flying it on 4S and 6S and you're going to use 2 different props, be mindful of which prop you've got on it with which pack. One really nice feature, it is a covered balsa plane. And at this size and scale, it's pretty epic. It's a very good looking paint scheme, as you can see, and it's a look that you just can't get with a foam airplane. There are other advantages to balsa planes beyond appearance though. These are much less susceptible to hanger rash. Little doinks and dings that you won't even see on this could trash a foam plane very quickly. Also, a covered balsa airplane is a very stiff airframe. As a rule, stiffer than foam, and that makes them a bit more precise to fly. You'll notice the clear windows. That's a pretty nice feature, and for the would-be modeler, if you'd like to add a pilot in there, there's room to do just that. Also, it has simple aluminum landing gear. That alleviates the failure points of a more complicated spring system, and it gets the job done. A full set of LEDs is a nice touch for those of us that appreciate an airplane with lights. The easily removable wing breaking down into two pieces is a nice touch with an airplane this big. Certainly makes storage and transport easier. You do have a convenient top hatch and a battery bay that is very, very large. So any type of batteries you want to put in there, there's room. And it comes with an extra bag of hardware. There is an additional air intake that you can cut the cowling and glue that on if you need extra cooling. That's a real advantage to the smart telemetry. You can take a look at your MOSFET temperature and see if that's something you even need to worry about doing. With the rest of this hardware, that is made for the floats that the airplane is made for. The Carbon Z float and wire kit is made to bolt right on this, and you'll use this hardware to do it if you decide you want to put her on floats. When it comes to the stock preliminary setup, the manual has you covered. All the pertinent information is there to get you through to a successful Maiden. You've got balance point, push rod placement on both the servo arms and the control horns, throw, expo, even flap settings with elevator compensation. Now, of course, once you fly the airplane, depending upon your style, what battery you're using, where it is, you may have to adjust some of that. Don't forget, you do have an open receiver. You can go in if you've got forward programming and adjust the priority and the gains of the AS3X to suit your tastes as well. We did make some change to that. We made a couple of mechanical changes, a couple of throw changes. Everything you need to know about our setup is next on the setup info page, so take a look. If you want to pause it and set yours up the way we did, you can. That was our maiden takeoff. We're going right into the stall tests. We'll do 2 clean and 1 dirty with the flaps down. It drops the right wing every time and is very easy to recover. And then you'll see our maiden landing. With full flaps, it slows down nicely. And of course, the further back you put the pack and the lighter the pack that you use, the better it slows down. Worth mentioning, we had some wind this day. It was blowing 4 to 5 with gusts up to 8 to 10. This big timber handled it well. It makes plenty of power on 6L and has the aerobatic capability to do anything in the sport aerobatic realm and quite a bit in the 3D and XA realm as well. We had our timer set to 7 minutes. With the 5000 6L, even flying it hard, you can get 8 pretty easy. Our microphone makes the landing gear and tires sound louder than they actually are, but they're still pretty loud. Some softer tires wouldn't hurt. The big timber will do pop tops and pinwheels as good as some dedicated 3D planes I've flown, and it has a semi-symmetrical airfoil, so inverted flight is very easy. The airplane's really happy there and doesn't require a lot of down elevator when you get the balance right. With the weather we've had lately, we didn't really get enough opportunity to put as much time on it as we'd like. As you can see, it will hover, and doing it down on the deck will be just a matter of getting a bit more comfortable with it. This footage is with a lighter weight 4000 6S pack a bit further back. It makes a difference in certain areas. It's a really stable airframe, flat turns with a lot of cross control, and the flaps down. That's a pretty good indication you got a stable plane. And there is so much power on 6S. Really doesn't matter what configuration you're in or what you're doing. Point it north, gun it, and off you go. With the ladder pack pushed back, it will flatten right out in an inverted flat spin. With the stock prop, which is optimized for 6S, it is a bit down on power on 4-cell, but it still has plenty for regular sport aerobatics. I was even able to sustain a knife edge on 4-cell. Took full power and full rudder, but it will do it. It doesn't really carry enough momentum and energy for a good pop top or pinwheel. I kept trying, but on 4-cell you just don't quite have enough oomph. That said, if you prop it up and optimize the prop for 4-cell, you could get enough power to do it. Where the airplane really excels on 4-cell is due to the lighter weight of the 4-cell packs. It really slows down well. I think if I were going to bush fly this plane and do bush flying the way we do it, which is more scale, I would probably use 4-cell just for that reason. There we have it. As you can see, the airplane makes a lot more power on 6-cell than it does on 4-cell, but on 4-cell I have to admit, I did the watt meter reading before I flew it, and I kind of had my doubts with the prop that is optimized for 6-cell that it would actually perform even halfway decent on 4-cell. And I was pleasantly surprised. You can still prop it up and make a lot more power than that on 4-cell if you want, but it did all right without having to do anything, even with the prop that's optimized for 6-cell. So that surprised me. Certainly a good bit slower with the lighter weight pack if stall work is what you want to do with it. There are two sayings that you're going to hear if you do this long enough. A lot of you will know what I'm talking about. It's bigger flies better and balsa flies better. Bigger flies better is almost always true. There are exceptions, but it usually has something to do with the way an airplane is set up and not the airplane. Any big airplane has the potential, when it's done right, to fly better than a smaller one. When it comes to balsa flies better, a lot of times that's true. It depends on your mission. There are times where foam airplanes do fly better than balsa planes, depending upon what you're looking for. This airplane epitomizes those two sayings, the good parts of it. Balsa flies better and bigger flies better. It does. This is the best flying timber that I've flown yet. Now that comes with a caveat. There are timbers that are more capable. Timber X, for instance, will do a lot more than this one will. But this one will do more than Horizon lets on. They say it's not really intended for 3D. I kind of beg to differ. If you can do it, it can do quite a bit. It does as good a pinwheel and pop top as a lot of actual dedicated 3D planes I've flown. So you can obviously hover it. If you get really comfortable, you can get it down low. It's an impressive airplane, and I think it absolutely hits the mark of flying as good as it looks. It is what I expected of an 80-inch timber. Does what it should do. When it comes to the skill level, I agree that the ARF is a skill level 3 and the bind and fly is a skill level 2. This airplane as a bind and fly was just a little bit more difficult to assemble than a lot of foamies that I've assembled, and if you've got several foamies under your belt, absolutely will not have a problem assembling this. Hopefully our video will help you. The instructions are very descriptive, and when it comes to the flight performance, if you can handle an intermediate airplane, you have intermediate skills, you're not going to have a problem handling this. It's going to fly a little bit different than your park flyer foamy, but in a good way. Take a little bit of an adjustment, but you'll be glad that you made the adjustment. When it comes to the price point, that is where it's going to be a point of contention for people that have only flown foamies. When it comes to the ARF price, and everything I'm going to tell you, just ask somebody that's flown balsa airplanes for a while. They'll tell you that what I'm telling you is the case. This ARF at 80 inches this size, that's a fair price. When it comes to a bind and fly balsa plane, that's kind of a new thing. It hasn't really been done. So you see that big price and you're like, man, that just seems like a lot. Well, it is a lot, but you get a lot. It's very good equipment. If you bought that equipment, just the proprietary equipment, which is high quality stuff, it's some of the better servos, a really good ESC, really good motor, really good receiver. If you buy that standalone and put it in the ARF, it's going to cost you about $170 more than the bind and fly. And with the bind and fly, the work is done for you and time is money. So in our opinion, it is a really good value for what you get for the money. And I have outfitted ARFs before this size with other high quality equipment. You get into some of the Castle ESCs, an X-Power motor from E-Flite, some of the high-tech D-Series servos. The airplane will not perform any better than it does with what it has in it, but you'll pay $150 more to outfit it with that stuff than you will the proprietary stuff. So I do believe it's a good deal. If you decide that you'd like to try out balsa, that you'd like to add one of these to your hanger, we'll put a link in the description where you can do just that. You go through that. It supports our channel. When you do that, we appreciate it. Thank you. That is it for us. I'm excited about this big, beautiful balsa timber. Take care. We'll see you next week with something cool with wings.